I'm Kimberly Ferguson, CEO and founder of Emerald Expectations Accounting. I'm so happy that you're here. The Emerald Corner is a place where life and business meet. So I want to help you have a growing and profitable small business while maintaining a life with your loved ones. Today's video is another episode of TechStyp Tuesday. So for those of you who are new here, TechStyp Tuesday is where I share with you tips and tricks on getting ready for tax season, how to save money on your taxes, and answer your specific tax questions. So if you have a specific tax question that you would like me to answer, please drop that in the comments below. I would love to make a video just for you. So today's question is, can you share with me the benefits and the negatives of accrual accounting versus cash accounting methods? So let's start from the beginning, which is, what the heck is cash and accrual accounting method? So for those of you who don't know, these are different ways of tracking your income and expenses, and they are the methods that are used to report on your tax returns, okay? So the cash basis is basically what it sounds like. Money comes in, and that's when you account for revenue. Money goes out, that's when you account for expenses. So in this method, you can really live and die based off of your bank statements and credit card statements, unless of course, you receive a check in the mail and you just don't deposit it for like a month. In that case, you do need to account for that revenue when you actually got it. But in most instances, money goes into your bank account, that's when you account for it. Money goes out of your bank account, that's when you account for the expense, right? So it's usually pretty straightforward. The accrual accounting method, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated, requires a little bit more work. So in this instance, you account for revenue when it is incurred and expenses when they are incurred, which, to break it down, basically means when you have earned the revenue and when you have received the goods or when you have received the service that you have obtained, that is when you would account for the expense. Now, in most cases, you're going to want to enter the invoices into your accounting system, and then when you send them out, that's when they're going to be accounted for. Whenever you create them in the system, that's when the income is going to be accounted for in your accounting. And when you receive an invoice for an expense or a service or inventory or something like that, that's when you're going to account for the expense. Not necessarily when you actually receive the goods, not necessarily when you actually pay the check or pay the vendor for their service, none of that stuff. It's all about when it is actually incurred. I know. It's a little confusing, a little tricky, but pros and cons of each, right? So for the cash basis, the benefit is it's more simplified, right? It's easier to do because, like I said, you can kind of live and die by those bank and credit card statements. So there's not a lot of extra work that needs to go into it. You can just connect your bank account as the transactions come in. You can code them as you would, and that's about it, right? Negatives, I would say that if you have a job-based company, meaning you really need to track the profitability of each job, it's going to be a little bit more challenging because most of the time we pay for expenses and then we receive income down the road, right? We don't usually have them together. So you're always going to see kind of a skewed profit and loss. The other thing is, on the cash basis, a lot of the times you can just do the accounting on a monthly basis. You don't do it kind of regularly, keeping up with it. So you may not always have completely updated financial statements. Does this matter to you? That's a good question. Now, for the accrual accounting method, the pros are that where you have those expenses and income kind of off-sided like this, a lot of the times they come together a little bit closer in the accrual method because you don't necessarily incur the expense until, you actually have either gotten someone to do the work for you or you've received the goods or whatever. And the income is accounted for when the job is done, or if you do progress billing, it's when that portion of the job is done. So you're a lot more likely to have them line up, probably not like this where they're perfect, but closer than if you were using the cash method of accounting, right? Negatives, well, as we talked about, this one is going to be a little bit more work intensive, more labor if you're paying someone, or more time if you're doing it yourself. Because, like I said, you're going to need to enter the invoices, you're going to need to enter the bills that you receive, you're going to need to account for potential inventory, that kind of stuff, if you're using the accrual method. One of the good things, though, is that you're doing this more regularly usually. So if you want to go in on a random Tuesday and check your accounting, chances are it is up to date, right? Or at least a lot closer than if you would have entered it, on the 31st of the month and it's now the 23rd of the next month, right? So that might be a good thing to keep in mind if you're considering one or the other. Now, who's required to actually use the accrual versus cash basis? The majority of businesses will use cash basis. If you have had over 25 million in revenue for the last 3 years in a row, you are required to use the accrual method. If you have inventory, you may be required to use the accrual method. Otherwise, you do not. You can use the cash method. You can also choose to use the accrual method, but keep in mind it is pretty difficult to switch back if you do decide that you don't like doing the accrual method. Now, what are the questions that you might ask yourself if you're going back and forth between, do I want to do cash basis? Do I want to do accrual basis, right? So I have 3 questions that I would recommend asking yourself. Number 1, how complicated do I want my accounting to be? As we discussed, cash is generally simpler, right? Accrual is generally more laborsome, more cumbersome, not necessarily more difficult, but definitely more work, right? So number 2 is, do I have inventory, or is my company kind of job based, right? Because if you have inventory, it's very possible that you will need to do accrual. And if you don't need to, you may still want to. And for those in, say, the construction industry who do a lot of job-based work, it may be beneficial for you to use this method so that you can keep track of each job and make sure that you're remaining profitable, right? And then number 3 is, how frequently do you need to view your financial statements? Most people who utilize the cash basis are perfectly happy viewing their financials once a month. In fact, most businesses are perfectly happy viewing their financials once a month. If you're somebody who's a little more anal or a little bit more detailed, or just generally want to know more frequently how your business is doing, then the accrual basis may be better for you, because of the fact that you're often entering this stuff as you go along, and therefore your accounting may be up to date more regularly, right? Now, if you're using the cash basis, that doesn't mean you can't update your file more frequently and actually have the same benefits, right? You can easily update your accounts every week, right? Or you can ask your accountant if you hire someone to do them every week. That's really not a problem. You won't be able to reconcile every single week because there's obviously not going to be a bank or credit card statement every week, but you will be able to get a general pretty good idea of what your financial statements look like, right? So thank you so much for spending just a couple minutes of your time with me today. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I will see you in my next video. TechStyp Tuesday, TechStyp Tuesday. Everyone loves TechStyp Tuesday.